24 hours. That's all it took for me to strip away 15 years of their control with one signature on a single piece of paper. They thought I was just a sick old woman they could dismiss and ignore. They were about to learn exactly how wrong they were. My name is Margaret Sullivan, but everyone calls me Maggie. I'm 73 years old and I've lived in Cedar Rapids, Iowa my entire life. I raised 3 children, buried a husband after 45 years of marriage, and spent decades thinking I knew what family loyalty looked like. I was about to discover I'd been living a lie. It started 3 weeks ago on a Tuesday morning that began like any other. I was watering my petunias on the front porch when this sharp pain shot through my chest like lightning. The next thing I knew, I was face down in my flower bed, dirt in my mouth, and my neighbor, Mrs. Henderson, screaming for help from across the fence. The ambulance ride was a blur of sirens and worried faces. All I could think about was how I'd ruined my favorite yellow dress, the one Robert had bought me for our anniversary years ago. Isn't it funny what your mind focuses on when everything's falling apart? They rushed me into the emergency room at Mercy Medical Center, and after what felt like hours of tests and poking and prodding, Dr. Williams came in with that serious expression doctors get when they have news you don't want to hear. "Mrs. Sullivan," he said, pulling up a chair beside my bed, "you've had a mild heart attack. We're going to need to keep you here for at least a week, maybe longer, to monitor your condition and adjust your medications." My heart sank. And not because of the medical condition. I immediately thought about my house, my bills, my responsibilities. See, after Robert passed away 5 years ago, I'd made the mistake of letting my son, David, and his wife, Jennifer, take over most of my financial affairs. They insisted it would be easier for everyone, especially as I got older. "Don't worry about all that paperwork, Mom," David had said. "We'll handle the important stuff so you can just focus on enjoying your retirement." Looking back now, I realize how naive I was. But when you've raised a child from birth, when you've sacrificed everything for their success, you want to believe they have your best interests at heart. You want to trust them. The first day in the hospital passed quietly. I was hooked up to monitors, getting adjusted to the rhythm of hospital life. The beeping machines, the antiseptic smell, nurses checking on me every hour. I called David that evening to let him know what happened. "Oh, Mom, I'm so sorry," he said, though his voice sounded distracted. I could hear Jennifer talking to someone in the background. "Are you okay? Do you need anything?" "The doctor says I'll be here for at least a week," I told him. "I'm worried about the house, about my bills." "Don't worry about any of that," he interrupted. "Jennifer and I have everything under control. You just focus on getting better." Something in his tone bothered me, but I couldn't put my finger on what. It was dismissive, almost like he was talking to a child. But I pushed the feeling aside. He was my son, after all. He was just trying to help. Wednesday came and went without a visit from either of them. I called Jennifer directly. "Oh, Maggie, we've been so busy with work," she said in that slightly condescending tone she'd developed over the years. "But don't worry, we're taking care of everything on your end. David went by your house to check on things." "I'd really like to see you both," I said. "It's lonely here, and we'll try to make it over the weekend," she said quickly. "But you know how crazy our schedule is." Thursday brought no visitors either. I tried calling the house phone to check my messages, but apparently Jennifer had already changed the voicemail to redirect people to call her cell phone during Mrs. Sullivan's recovery period. Something cold settled in my stomach when the nurse told me about the message. Friday afternoon I was feeling stronger and had walked to the nurse's station to ask about getting some fresh air in the courtyard when I overheard Jennifer talking to my nurse, Sandra. Sandra was a sweet woman in her 40s who'd been taking excellent care of me all week. She always made sure I understood what medications I was taking and kept me informed about my progress. She treated me like a person, not like an object to be managed. "I'm David Sullivan's wife," Jennifer was saying in her most authoritative voice. "I handle all of Mrs. Sullivan's affairs now. You don't need to update her on her medical information directly. We'll handle all the important communications." I froze behind the corner where they couldn't see me. Sandra's voice was confused but professional. "Ma'am, Mrs. Sullivan is fully conscious and coherent. She has the right to know about her own medical care." "Look," Jennifer interrupted, and her tone turned sharp. "She's elderly and gets confused easily. It's better if you just give all updates to us. We don't want to stress her unnecessarily with details she won't understand anyway." My blood turned to ice water. Confused? Didn't understand? I had a college degree in education, had taught high school English for 35 years, and had been managing my own affairs just fine until I let them take over. "I understand your concern," Sandra said diplomatically, "but I'm required by law to communicate directly with the patient unless she specifically signs a waiver." "Then we'll get that waiver," Jennifer said firmly. "In fact, I'll bring the paperwork on Monday. David and I are her emergency contacts, and we have power of attorney for her finances, so it just makes sense." Power of attorney for finances? That was news to me. I'd never signed any such document. I quietly made my way back to my room, my mind racing. Over the next hour, little things I'd dismissed started clicking into place like puzzle pieces. How Jennifer always seemed to know exactly how much money was in my accounts. How she'd suggested I stop getting paper statements mailed to my house to reduce clutter. How David had convinced me to add his name to my checking account just in case of emergencies. The bills I used to pay myself were now being handled electronically through their computer. My Social Security checks were being deposited into accounts they managed. Even my small pension from the school district was being directed to them for simplified management. I'd gone from being an independent woman to being... what? A financial resource they were managing? A responsibility they were handling? That evening, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying Jennifer's words. "You don't need to update her. We handle the important things." As if I wasn't important. As if my own medical information was too complex for my confused mind to handle. Saturday morning, I called my old friend Ruth Henderson, Mrs. Henderson's daughter-in-law, who worked at the bank where I'd had accounts for over 40 years. "Ruth, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest with me," I said. "Of course, Maggie. What's going on? Have David and Jennifer been managing my accounts? And if so, what kind of access do they have?" There was a long pause. "Maggie, honey, I'm not supposed to discuss specific account details over the phone, but are you asking because you're concerned about something?" "Yes, I am." Another pause. "Can you come into the bank when you get out of the hospital? There are some things I think you should see in person." My hands were shaking when I hung up the phone. Ruth's tone had told me everything I needed to know without her saying a word. Sunday came and went with no visit from David or Jennifer. I called David's cell phone 3 times. It went straight to voicemail each time. Monday morning, Jennifer showed up bright and early with a folder of papers and that fake smile she wore when she wanted something. "Maggie," she said, bending down to give me an air kiss near my cheek, "you look so much better. The rest has done you good." "Where's David?" I asked. "Oh, he's at work. You know how busy the insurance company keeps him." She pulled out a chair and sat down, opening her folder. "But I brought the paperwork Sandra mentioned on Friday. It's just a simple form that will let David and me handle your medical communications while you're recovering. It'll be so much less stressful for you." She slid a document across my bedside table. It was titled Healthcare Proxy and Medical Information Release Authorization. "This just says that we can talk to your doctors about your care," she explained, clicking her pen. "Sign right there at the bottom." I picked up the paper and started reading it carefully. Jennifer's smile grew a little forced. "It's really just a formality, Maggie. Standard stuff." But as I read, I realized this wasn't standard at all. This document would give David and Jennifer complete authority over my medical decisions. It would prevent doctors from speaking to me directly about my own care without their permission. It essentially declared me incompetent to handle my own medical affairs. "Jennifer," I said slowly, "this form says you would have the right to make medical decisions for me, even if I disagree with them." Her smile faltered slightly. "Well, yes. but only if the doctors think you're not able to make good decisions. If the medications make you confused or something. But I'm not confused. Of course not, she said quickly. It's just a precaution. Look, Maggie, David and I are just trying to help. We don't want you to have to worry about all these complicated medical details while you're trying to recover. I set the paper down without signing it. I think I'll wait for David to come visit so we can discuss this together. Jennifer's expression hardened almost imperceptibly. He's very busy this week, and the doctor said they might discharge you on Wednesday, so we really need to get this filed today. Then I guess it will have to wait. For just a moment, her mask slipped completely. I saw irritation, frustration, and something else I couldn't quite identify. Then she rearranged her features back into that concerned daughter-in-law expression. Of course, whatever makes you comfortable, she said, but her voice had gone cold. I'll talk to David about finding time to visit. After she left, I called Ruth at the bank. Ruth, I need you to do me a favor. Can you come visit me here at the hospital? There's something I need to discuss with you, and it can't wait until I'm discharged. I'll be there during my lunch break, she said without hesitation. Ruth arrived at noon with a manila envelope and a very serious expression. She pulled the curtain around my bed for privacy before sitting down. Maggie, I've brought copies of your account activity for the past 18 months, she said quietly. I probably shouldn't be doing this, but I've known you for 20 years, and some things have been bothering me. She opened the envelope and spread several bank statements across my bed. Even looking at them upside down, I could see numbers that made my heart sink. Your Social Security and pension deposits are still coming in regularly, Ruth explained. But look at the withdrawal patterns. She pointed to line after line of electronic transfers, hundreds of dollars every month being moved to accounts I didn't recognize, cash withdrawals in amounts I would never make, automatic payments to credit, cards I'd never opened. Ruth, I don't understand any of this. I never authorized these transfers. I know you didn't, she said gently, but technically you don't have to. David's name is on all these accounts as a joint owner with full access. Legally, he can do whatever he wants with the money. My hands shook as I looked at the statements. In 18 months, over $40,000 had been quietly moved out of my accounts. My savings account, which had contained nearly $60,000 when Robert died, was down to less than $8,000. There's more, Ruth said reluctantly. She pulled out another document. 3 months ago, Jennifer came in and had you added to a credit card account. She said you needed it for emergencies while they were managing your affairs. I never applied for a credit card. I know, they use their power of attorney to do it. But Maggie, the balance on that card is now over $15,000. Charges from restaurants, department stores, a vacation to Florida, expenses that don't look like they're for your benefit. I stared at the papers until the numbers blurred together. $40,000 from my savings, $15,000 in credit card debt I didn't know I had, all while they told me they were handling the important things so I could enjoy my retirement. Ruth, when did I give David power of attorney? She pulled out one more document. According to our records, you signed these forms 18 months ago. But Maggie, I have to tell you, I was worried about this from the beginning. When Jennifer brought in the paperwork, she said you were getting forgetful and that's why they needed to take over. But you've never seemed forgetful to me. I looked at the signature on the power of attorney document. It looked like my signature, but something about it seemed off. The M in Margaret was formed differently than I usually wrote it. Ruth, I need you to be completely honest with me. Do you think this signature is real? She leaned closer to examine it. Maggie, I'm not a handwriting expert, but I've seen your signature on dozens of documents over the years. This one looks different. The room felt like it was spinning. Not only had they been stealing from me, but they might have forged the very documents that gave them permission to do it. What can I do? I asked. Ruth's expression was grim. That's complicated. If the power of attorney is legitimate, they have legal authority over your finances. If it's forged, that's a felony. but proving forgery can be difficult and expensive. So they just get away with it? Not necessarily. Ruth leaned forward. There might be another option. The power of attorney document they have only covers financial matters. It doesn't give them any authority over other legal decisions. And there's something else. If you can prove you were coerced or deceived into signing it, you might be able to revoke it. We talked for another 20 minutes about my options. Most of them involved lawyers, court proceedings, and months of legal battles while David and Jennifer continued to have access to my accounts. But Ruth had mentioned something else, almost as an afterthought. Of course, if you wanted to make changes to your accounts or your will, you could still do that yourself as long as you're mentally competent. The hospital stay actually works in your favor there. All these medical evaluations prove you're thinking clearly. After Ruth left, I spent the afternoon thinking. I was angry, hurt, and betrayed. But I was also something else. Determined. They thought I was just a confused old woman they could manipulate and steal from. They thought I would never find out, or that if I did, I'd be too afraid or too weak to do anything about it. They were about to learn how wrong they were. Tuesday morning, I asked Sandra to help me make some phone calls. The first was to James Morrison, the attorney who had handled Robert's will and my basic legal needs for years. "Jim, I need you to come to the hospital today if possible," I said. "I have a legal matter that can't wait, and I need some documents prepared immediately." "Of course, Maggie. Are you all right?" "I'm about to be." The second call was to my bank's main office. I asked to speak with the manager about urgent concerns regarding unauthorized account access. The third call was to Dr. Williams. "Doctor, I need you to document something in my medical file," I said. "I need it clearly stated that I am mentally competent and fully capable of making my own legal and financial decisions." "Of course, Mrs. Sullivan. Is there a problem?" "There's about to be a solution." Jim Morrison arrived at 4 o'clock with his briefcase and that reassuring competence that comes from 40 years of practice. I'd known Jim since David was in high school. He was someone I could trust completely. "Maggie, tell me what's going on." I showed him the bank statements Ruth had brought, explained about the power of attorney I'd never knowingly signed, and told him about Jennifer's attempts to gain control over my medical decisions as well. Jim's expression grew darker as I spoke. When I finished, he was quiet for a long moment. "Maggie, if what you're telling me is accurate, this could constitute elder financial abuse and possibly forgery. These are serious crimes." "I don't want to send my son to prison, Jim. I just want to protect myself and get back control of my life." He nodded thoughtfully. "There are ways to handle this that focus on protection rather than prosecution, but it will require some decisive action on your part." "What kind of action?" Jim opened his briefcase and pulled out a legal pad. "First, we revoke any power of attorney they might have, whether it's legitimate or not. Second, we remove David from your accounts and establish new ones they can't access. Third, we set up protections to prevent this from happening again. How quickly can we do this? If you're certain this is what you want, I can have the paperwork ready by tomorrow morning." I looked out the window at the parking lot below where people were going about their normal lives, unaware that mine was about to change completely. In that moment, I thought about all the times I'd put other people's needs before my own, all the times I'd been understanding when I should have been firm, all the ways I'd made myself smaller to avoid conflict. I was done being small. Do it. Wednesday morning, Jim returned with a folder of documents and a notary from his office. Dr. Williams had already provided a letter confirming my mental competence, and Sandra had agreed to serve as a witness to my signatures. The first document revoked any and all powers of attorney I had previously granted to any person, whether knowingly or unknowingly. The second removed David as a joint owner from all my accounts. The third established new accounts with only my name, protected by passwords only I would know. But the fourth document was the one that mattered most. It was a new will that replaced the one David and Jennifer thought they understood. See, they'd been counting on inheriting everything when I passed away. David was my only child, and Jennifer had made comments over the years about when the house comes to us and after Mom's money comes through. They'd been spending my savings like it was already theirs because they assumed it eventually would be. The new will changed that completely. My house, my remaining savings, and all my possessions would now go to establish a scholarship fund at the high school where I'd taught for 35 years. David would inherit exactly $1, an old legal tradition that proves you didn't forget to include someone, you just chose not to leave them anything meaningful. "Are you certain about this, Maggie?" Jim asked before I signed the will. "This is dramatic." I thought about Jennifer's voice saying, "You don't need to update her. We handle the important things." I thought about $40,000 missing from my savings. I thought about the credit card debt they'd created in my name. "I'm certain." After I signed all the documents, Jim made some phone calls. Within 2 hours, David and Jennifer's access to my accounts had been terminated. The credit cards they'd opened in my name were frozen. New account numbers were issued for everything. But here's the part they weren't expecting. The new accounts were set up with automatic notifications. Every transaction, every withdrawal, every attempted access would generate an immediate alert to my phone and email. I would know instantly if anyone tried to touch my money. Jim also set up something called a credit freeze, which would prevent anyone from opening new accounts in my name without my explicit permission and a password only I knew. "What about their existing access to the accounts they've been using?" I asked. "Those accounts will be closed by end of business today," Jim said. "Any automatic payments they've set up will be declined. Any cards linked to those accounts will be deactivated." "How long before they realize what's happened?" "Probably the first time they try to use one of the cards or access an account. I'd expect that to be sometime in the next 24 hours. The phone call came at 11:30 Thursday morning. I was awake, I was ready, and I was stronger than I'd felt in years. "Mom, what the hell did you do?" David's voice was panicked, angry, and completely different from the patronizing tone he'd used all week. "I protected myself, David." "The bank says you've removed me from your accounts. They froze the credit cards. We can't access anything." "That's right. But Mom, we've been managing everything for you. We have bills set up, automatic payments." "You've been stealing from me, David. For 18 months, you've been treating my money like it was yours." There was a long pause. Then Jennifer's voice came on the line. Apparently, I was on speakerphone. "Maggie, I think you're confused about what's been happening," she said in that condescending tone. "We've been helping you manage your finances because you were getting overwhelmed. Jennifer, I know about the $40,000 you've taken from my savings. I know about the credit cards you opened in my name. I know about the forged power of attorney." Another pause, longer this time. "Mom," David's voice was different now, pleading. "Look, maybe we made some mistakes, but we can fix this. We were just trying to help, and you were trying to help yourselves," I said firmly. "And now you've helped yourselves right out of access to my accounts, my medical information, and my will." "Your will?" Jennifer's voice was sharp. "Yes, I've made some changes there too. You might want to start planning for your retirement based on your own resources, not mine." The phone went quiet except for muffled voices arguing in the background. Then David came back on the line. "Mom, you can't do this. We'll contest it. We'll prove you're not competent to make these decisions." I almost smiled. "David, I'm sitting in a hospital where I've been evaluated by multiple doctors who have all documented that I'm mentally sharp and fully capable of managing my affairs. I have witnesses to all the documents I've signed, and I have bank records showing exactly what you've done with my money. If you want to contest anything, I suggest you get a very good lawyer." "But Mom," "But nothing. You dismissed me to the hospital staff like I was an object to be managed. You stole my money and put debt in my name. You forged legal documents to give yourselves authority over my life. The only mistake I made was trusting you." I hung up the phone. For the next hour, they called repeatedly. I didn't answer. They sent text messages that went from pleading to angry to threatening. I didn't respond. Sandra knocked on my door around 1 o'clock. "Mrs. Sullivan? There are 2 people here who say they're your family. They want to speak with you, but they seem upset. Would you like me to tell them you're resting?" "No, Sandra, but I would like you to call security and have them escort my visitors to the lobby. If my son and daughter-in-law want to speak with me, they can do it there, with security present." 20 minutes later, I walked into the lobby to find David and Jennifer sitting stiffly on the couch, a security guard standing nearby. David looked defeated. Jennifer looked furious. "Mom, please," David started as I sat down across from them. "We can work this out." "David, you've been stealing from me for over a year. You put $15,000 of debt in my name. You tried to gain control over my medical decisions by lying to the hospital staff. There's nothing to work out." "We never meant for it to go this far," he said, and I could see tears in his eyes. "At first, we were just trying to help manage things, but then Jennifer lost her job and we had some expenses. So you decided to use my savings account as your personal ATM?" Jennifer leaned forward aggressively. "You weren't using that money anyway, Maggie. It was just sitting there." "It was my money, Jennifer, sitting in my account. And it would have come to us eventually anyway." There it was. The truth, finally spoken out loud. They'd been spending my money because they considered it already theirs. "Well, that's no longer a concern for you," I said calmly, "since it won't be coming to you at all." Jennifer's face went white. "What do you mean?" "I mean, I've changed my will. The house, the accounts, everything is going to charity when I pass away. You get nothing." David looked like I'd slapped him. "Mom, you can't mean that." "I absolutely do mean it. You've shown me exactly how much my life and my dignity mean to you. This is me returning the favor." They tried to argue, to plead, to make promises about paying back the money and never doing it again. But I was done listening to their excuses. "The only reason I'm not pressing criminal charges is because David is my son," I said finally. "But if either of you ever tries to access my accounts again, if you ever forge my signature again, if you ever try to manipulate my medical care again, I will call the police immediately. Do you understand?" They understood. I walked back to my room feeling lighter than I had in months. Sandra was waiting for me with a smile. "Mrs. Sullivan, Dr. Williams says you can go home tomorrow morning if you're feeling up to it." "I'm feeling up to it," I said. "In fact, I'm feeling up to a lot of things." The next morning, Jim Morrison picked me up from the hospital and drove me to the bank, where Ruth had prepared new accounts with my maiden name, Margaret Catherine O'Brien, so that David and Jennifer couldn't even find them if they tried. We changed my address to a P.O. box, set up new automatic deposits for my Social Security and pension, and arranged for paper statements to be mailed to me again. Then we went to the phone company and changed my number, and to the post office to set up mail forwarding, and to my doctor's office to update my emergency contacts. By the end of the day, David and Jennifer had no way to access my money, my mail, my medical information, or even my phone number. They'd gone from controlling every aspect of my financial life to having no access whatsoever. The best part? It had all taken less than 24 hours. That evening, I sat in my living room, drinking tea from Robert's favorite mug and looking at the bank statements from my new accounts. For the first time in 18 months, every penny was exactly where I'd left it. I thought about calling David, maybe trying to rebuild some kind of relationship. But then I remembered Jennifer's voice. "You don't need to update her. We handle the important things." Well, I'd handled the most important thing of all, taking back my life. 6 weeks later, I received a certified letter from an attorney representing David and Jennifer. They were attempting to have me declared incompetent so they could regain control of my finances. But their petition was dismissed immediately when the court reviewed my medical records, my bank statements showing the theft and testimony from Dr. Williams, Sandra, Ruth, and Jim Morrison about my mental clarity and competence. The judge also noted that their petition appeared to be motivated by financial gain rather than genuine concern for my welfare, especially since they'd made no attempt to visit or contact me since our meeting at the hospital. That was 3 months ago. I haven't heard from them since. I've started volunteering at the literacy center downtown, helping adults learn to read. I've reconnected with old friends I'd lost touch with over the years. I've even started dating a lovely gentleman named Frank, who plays piano at the senior center. Most importantly, I wake up every morning knowing that my life belongs to me again. My money is mine, my decisions are mine, and my future is mine to determine. They thought I was just a confused old woman they could control and manipulate. Instead, they discovered that 73 years of life had taught me exactly how to handle people who mistake kindness for weakness. Sometimes the best justice isn't revenge, it's simply reclaiming what was always rightfully yours. And sometimes one signature on the right document is all it takes to remind people that you're not as helpless as they assumed. I may be older, but I'm far from powerless. And now David and Jennifer know that too.